against these hordes of human predators, if you will. And therefore, human beings were seen as a problem, as a threat. They were not part of the argument, were not part of the picture. The broader picture was nature has to be kept pristine.
Over the next few years, it was this idea of a pristine nature, timeless, unchanging, and most of all untouched by humans, that came to determine not only the future of Serengeti, but of wild Africa as a whole.
A national park must remain a piece of primordial wilderness to be effective. No man, not even native ones, should live inside the borders.
The only problem is, the more we look, the more we find this view to be at odds with the bigger picture.
Beneath the hooves of the wildebeest, there is a much older story, the story of human beings, actually the story of life itself.
The complete account of the shaping of Africa's landscape that has been hidden from us by the dominance of just one way of looking at the world. Almost 50 years earlier, an entomologist called Catfinkel was chasing butterflies through the wilds of Serengeti when events took a remarkable twist near the edge of a rocky gorge.
He had spotted a butterfly that he particularly wanted, and Catfinkel followed it down into the bushes. And presumably he found a number of butterflies, but he also found fossilized remains of extinct mammals.
Catfinkel had stumbled upon Oldupai Gorge, one of the most famous sites of early human history known today. The real significance of Oldupai wasn't immediately clear, not until after the Second World War, when a controversial paleoanthropologist and his wife focused their attention on Catfinkel's scrubby, remote gorge. It wasn't long before Louis and Mary Leakey revealed a sensational new find. Zinjanthropus boisei, as they called it, was estimated to be nearly 2 million years old, at the time the oldest human-like creature ever found.
And that got the world very excited about the great antiquity of humanity and the presence of humanity in one form or the other in Africa, and presumably in some way relating to the spread from Africa to other parts of the world.
And just 30 miles south of Oldupai is Laetoli. Here Mary later found footprints, 3 apes walking upright across the savannah, 3.5 million years ago.
Clearly, bipedal apes, creatures that walked habitually on 2 legs, from which we are descended in one way or the other, were in Africa at least 4 million years ago, and it's the oldest record of bipedalism that's been found anywhere in the world. And clearly the African apes, of which we are one, were derived from that ancient fauna.
The very latest evidence suggests that the presence in Serengeti of humans and the ancestors of humans from so far back in time is no coincidence. Because of a quirk of nature, grasses and trees have a different way of turning sunlight into food. When they die, they leave slightly different forms of carbon in the earth. Analysis of these signature traces has led to startling conclusions about the true nature of the African savanna. Over time, the amount of tree cover has fluctuated drastically between 2 extremes. On one hand a forest, on the other a grassland. And the main force behind these cycles is the climate.
What we've seen, major changes in rainfall conditions, so that we have had droughts, some of them have lasted for 30,000 years, where clearly this whole system would have been completely different. And the other thing that we've known from all of this is that they change incredibly fast. It could take only 20 years for it to flip from one to another. What it means in terms of what we see today and the future is that nothing stays the same.
And it is this changing nature of the savanna that in turn influences everything.
It is the dynamic of habitat change that drives evolution. If everything had remained pristine whenever that moment was, then we probably certainly wouldn't be here anyway, because there would have been no pressure for an ape to stand up in the first place.
The more we find out, the more a picture of humans as an integral part of the savanna ecosystem from the earliest times begins to emerge. And soon, early humans started to exert their influence on the landscape. With fire, they could start to tip the natural balance of the savanna to their advantage, pushing back woodland to open up grassland.
I think it's been shaped and reshaped time and time again for the last at least 1 million years. And certainly since fire became a factor. Because I think even the early hunter-gatherers would have used fire to get rid of some of the coarser grazing to create these patches of greenness that then attracted in wildlife. So I have no doubt whatsoever that the hunter-gatherer going back 500,000 years plus was a major agent of using fire in the Serengeti.
As geological time gave way to historical time, the human influence over the environment moved into a new phase.
When cattle came down into that area some 4,500 years ago, they would have had a huge impact on opening up the countryside. And I think herders would have frequently set fire to bush to clear areas for grass.
Tulikuwa tunachoma nyasi ili tuweze kupata nyasi mpya na pia tuweze kuua hao wadudu mbungo. Kwa hiyo inaingia kwenye ng'ombe, kwa hiyo tulikuwa tunachoma na kupe ili nyasi zile zikiungua na wale kupe wanaungua, basi ng'ombe wetu hawatapata ugonjwa. Na baadaye nyasi zinachibuka na wanyama walikuwa wanapenda sana kwenye nyasi hizi ambazo ni mpya.
What the pastoralist is trying to do is get rid of the tree cover and create more grassland. So fire for them becomes a very important tool in making the savannas more savanna-like. And this is the irony to me. If you take away fire and you take away pastoralist, you end up with lots of thickets and bush over much of Africa.